Good day, everyone. So hope you're all doing really well. I'm certainly doing a lot better since last week, Tuesday, and I think, I've got enough energy for us to talk about something very, very interesting, and that is account progression in Genshin Impact. And yes, I've got Mona here for a specific reason, but to give you a bit of background, recently I made a video here on Genshin Impact, and the point of the video was to say that, hey, look, they're going to change the way in which the character banners and the weapon banners work in 5.0, and it does feel a bit unfair that for those of us that wanted to get, let's say, a specific weapon, we had to pay or go through two fate systems just to max it out for our characters, whereas new players are obviously now going to get the same benefits potentially at a much lower cost, and this deserved compensation. Now, you might disagree with the idea that people should get compensation, and there's a whole discussion that went on. I'm not going to rehash that discussion, but whether you agree with my fundamental idea or not, that's not really what I want to talk about. The point about arguing, or at least reasoning about these things, is that we really take a look at the game of Genshin Impact and we start asking ourselves some interesting questions of what is fairness when it comes to account progression. So when we talk about account progression, we talk about things like exploring the map to 100% and obviously and ultimately accumulating primogems. That is what the game is all about. So if you don't want to, let's say you want a character and you don't want to engage with the game, but you really want this, well, you can shortcut it by going to a shop. That is basically how Genshin Impact works. Your account progression, exploration, putting in time and effort into the game in the hopes of getting primogems and getting more characters and enjoying the product that the game offers you is all tied obviously into either A, whether you're going to pay, or B, how you engage with the overworld. So let's bring this back then to Mona. Way back when, in December of 2020, I got a C4 Zhongli. Not because I wanted Zhongli, but because I wanted Mona. Yes, it sounds silly, because it is. Because me, being me, could not stand swimming. I could not get it. It was so frustrating. The artificial limitation of drowning and having to use stamina to swim was so irritating. But when I got Mona, it felt really, really good because suddenly my progression wasn't inhibited. If I wanted to go from point A to point B, I just quickly swim, and this is going to be faster than teleporting in some instances. So that is the whole point, and that is the point that I want to make today. Effectively, if you start giving players the ability to get characters more cheaply and weapons more cheaply, then effectively when it comes to exploring the world and beating up the enemies and getting challenges more quickly done, what you're doing is effectively you're accelerating the account progression for newer players, whereas us as older players, we had to go through slowing waters, we had to go through this freezing domain, and it was pain. We did not have a Farina that can just walk on water everywhere, wherever. That's not the game we used to have. We had a system where if you wanted to go on water, you can't use any combat abilities, and you had to give up your stamina in order to do so. And that to me always felt fair. There was a sense of, even if you got a character, there was a bit of a give and take. I think a good example is Kirara here. So do you want to climb up very, very quickly? Well, yes, you can climb up much faster than you would be able to do ordinarily, but this obviously comes at the cost of increased stamina consumption. So that is exactly how Kirara works. There's a give and a take there, and it's a good example of creating a world or an environment with limitations that prohibit you from progressing far, and then putting in clever mechanics to engage with that environment. That's what makes Genshin Impact as beautiful as this cat girl. That's what I love about the game. So obviously you also understand that because account progression can either come in the form of primogems or getting characters, certain characters are premium characters and they allow you to traverse quite like quite fast, and if you put in more primo gems into them, you can traverse even faster. And this might seem very, very silly, but over the course of literal months and years, if you take every single little bit of a 2 or a 3 or a 5 second saved here and there, it really adds up to be quite significant. So this is the point that I'm trying to make. Fundamentally, Genshin Impact has an in-game economy that is tied into how fast you can complete the game. Yes, there is a hard cap with regards to stamina, and there are also various soft caps in terms of your ability to engage with the environment. So one of the other things apart from movement based abilities is your ability to beat certain enemies. Now let's quickly see if we can find, let's say, a stronger enemy, but this is the fundamental point that I wanted to make. If you're a new player and you see a big enemy like this, your best way of beating them, even at a low adventure rank, would be to get stronger weapons. And make no mistake, these weapons at the lower AR levels are really, really busted because they give you quite a significant advantage. Remember, at the low AR levels, you do not have things like crit rate or crit damage. These substats and stats are not accessible to players, and yet what you have is a weapon that just gives you a lot of these stats that you would have otherwise gotten from your artifacts. So that means your account progression becomes incredibly fast, and you can beat up enemies so quickly. I mean, it's just done. It's just, hey, bye-bye. And that means I can open up the chest, get my 5 primo gems, and so my account progression becomes faster and faster and faster. And effectively, where it took all the players, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, it'll now only take me equivalently 10 days to get that same amount of progress in terms of exploring the world, beating the enemies, and accumulating primo gems. And because primo gems are time sensitive because of characters being released, it's entirely possible that suddenly Genshin releases a strong character, let's say Mavrika, or some game-breaking character like Farina or a Neuvillette, and now a new player progresses, they get more primo gems, they have better rates to get the stronger character that power crept all of your older characters, and they can get the weapons faster. At some fundamental level, my question, and it's just an open question and I'll accept if I'm wrong, is just to say, how fair is this? I mean, some of us really put in a lot of effort and time to explore the overworld of Genshin Impact. Nobody, I think, in their right mind would say that something like, where is... Wow, I can't even look properly. Something to this team. This is what I had, and I think Sucrose as well. But this is what I explored the majority of Liyue, Mondstadt, and Inazuma with. Does this seem like the most fun team to do things? In fact, I was the guy that thought Chi-Chi was amazing because, oh, I just heal, and the more I attack enemies, the more I heal. So it was almost like this offensive cannon. It was just how the game played way back when and how we progressed over time has certainly changed from where it is now. So these days you have a character like Farina that basically says, well, you don't need a Chi-Chi, you don't need a Mona, you don't need heals, you don't need to walk on water, you don't need offense. All you literally need is someone called Farina that will literally go and do all of those things. As you can see here, I popped this, so now I'm going to attack you, so that's the offense. I can heal, I can walk on water, so if the enemies are very scary and I'm on low health, I just come here and I heal up and the enemies can't do anything. So the value of those 3 characters has been condensed and compressed into one character, and that is just absolutely crazy. So once again, I want to talk and just like discuss this and say, I understand that newer players might feel like, hey, it would be unfair if all the players got like compensation, but at the end of the day, we had to make certain decisions, and decisions like, for instance, if someone wished on Emily's weapon banner were made prior to knowing that the fate points would change. So this is why I've said to, I think, one of the guys here in the comment section, one of the problems we had is this. It's the fact that it's not a hindsight bias, but it's transparency and timely communication from the game's developers that we are lacking. Imagine you were given a roadmap, or you were told by the developers, hey, here is a Chronicle Wish banner. Don't waste time getting and spending 60 Primo Gems to get your the look and then having the Chronicled Wish disappear forever when we are going to give you on the anniversary a 5-star. Just that communication from the devs would have been so appreciated. It would have meant that people would not waste wishes unnecessarily. And that is the big issue that I take with it. And this is why I believe that when it comes to account progression, there should be some form of way of saying, hey, listen guys, we built a world, a system way back when that was, by today's standards and by the competition that we can see and so on, not the fairest system of them all. And whilst Genshin Impact needs quality of life changes, there also needs to be an update to players to ensure that the account progression is at least even, regardless of when players have started. Yes, there are certain things I think that new players benefit from. They benefit from hindsight bias, knowing which enemies to attack, which are the best farming routes. So obviously those are things that I can accept. Things like stamina changes, that there are lots of concessions that have been made for newer players. The question is, at what point do we say, is this fair or isn't this fair? And that's the open question that I want to leave you with. From my perspective, what I'm seeing is that the world of Genshin Impact, at least the lower ARs, have enemies that are easier to beat. You've got enemies that can be CC'd all over that have been constantly nerfed. You get characters that can do it all for newer players. And at some point, it's just like saying, but like for like, where is the fairness and the transparency in this? It certainly comes down to a lack of communication and dev intent. And Mihoyo, I think the way himself said, Genshin players feel we don't listen, and that is the point. I mean, these are fundamental issues players have been talking about, but the Genshin team never addressed them. Every one of the supposed quality of life changes in 5.0 are things we've been talking about ever since we only had like this part of the map available to us. So no, it's not that the Genshin team listened, it's the fact that there's competition, and now suddenly they've woken up to the fact that unless their product offering aligns with a more modern way of how things should be done, they're not going to get as many new players, and it's going to be harder for older players to stick around. What's more is the fact that us as older players are the ones that literally go onto social media. We post guides saying exactly how you should use all the characters and what are some of the ways of, let's say, pairing an old character like Jean, which a new player could get, with a character like Farina and Navia and all of these things. We are fundamentally the people that have driven a lot of the community engagement on Hoyo's behalf, and we've also given new players the opportunity to understand how the game works. And fundamentally, all that I'm asking for is that Hoyo comes and says, listen, all the players, we hear you. We hear where you guys are coming from. Yes, at some point, some of you might have needed to spend quite a lot of money to get this weapon and this character, and newer players have the advantage. So let us come and meet you halfway, because effectively a new player's Primo Gems are now suddenly worth significantly more than what yours have been. In other words, a new player unlocking a chest right here on Watatsumi Island or here in Inazuma is fundamentally going to get more gameplay value. And the question is that fair? You guys might agree or disagree, but that's the conversation that I want to put out there. I think it is important to talk about these things, evaluate where we are in terms of the game, our expectations, because ultimately, if these things aren't addressed, these slow little things, then people are going to feel like, hey, you know what? I played this game, it wasted a lot of my time, let me go to a ring ways where I can get my weapon easier. I don't have all of these gotcha RNG, it's much easier. They give me a 5-star since I'm beginning to play, etc., etc. And that's just how players are going to feel. They're just going to feel like, if there's no point in being a long-term player in the long-term, oops, sorry for a mic bump, then obviously, why even play Genshin Impact at all? So yeah, guys, that is really where I am at. This conversation is not about whether you agree or disagree with the Fate Point compensation, but one about the state of the game, and really asking some critical questions about it, and saying to Hoyo, yeah, the way you might come up on stage and pretend you're listening, we know it's only because of the competition, so and understand what the real issues are that we as older players are facing. And that is why people like me just put out these conversations. Even if it amounts to nothing, at least we can say, hey, we've had the talk on this, now let's move on to the next issue, and there will always be a next issue in Genshin. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next vid.